Okay, let's learn something cool. Um, 2 orders of depth and 4 types of depth. Now, I think I've said like a billion times why you don't want to use the pop-up flash or speed light on top of your camera. Like, okay, that's my speed light on top of my camera. Why? You know, we can say, well, we know not to do that, but what's the reason for that? When you blast the hell out of something, you've given it no definition. 2 orders, 4 types of depth. We're going to talk about the luminal depth and spatial depth, and then the 4 types of depth. Translational depth, rendered depth, compositional depth, and depth due to depth of field or bokeh. So why don't you want to use speed light on top of your camera? Just starting off, you just flood it. Wah! You just flood it with light. You've given it no definition. It renders flat. You can have the best micro contrast lens in the world. On your camera, you need to have all of these in order such that the image really pops. And of course, there are tons of other important factors when it comes to the composition and the photograph, not just the depth. However, that's important. I mean, I've seen a lot of perfectly exposed. Well, it's perfectly exposed. Like, yeah, and it's flat. Well, why is it flat? Well, why don't magazines, well, nobody reads photography magazines anymore, but why doesn't anybody even talk about this online? I mean, they really don't. I've talked endlessly about micro contrast, so let's talk about the 2 types of depth, and let's really learn something. And, it may be hard to listen to or ugly to look at, but if you think this isn't interesting, then you are really not interested in photography, because I'm going to teach you something here. And just bear with my ugly face or my awful voice or whatever it is you can't stand about me and learn something, okay? 2 types of depth, luminal depth and spatial depth. Suffering from a sore throat. Grape juice. Micro contrast. I've talked endlessly about micro contrast, okay? That's part of luminal depth. Part of the lens, the intertonal transmission. Lens render depth, the phase disparity, the binocular disparity. Okay, now let's talk about phase. We know most people don't know what phase light is, what's in phase, out of phase. Well, you know the difference between a light bulb and a laser. Well, one is out of phase, incoherent light, and the other one is in phase. And the difference is that one will burn the back of your retinas out and it'll destroy the sensor on your DSLR camera like that. So why is this important? I'll get to that. Light phase. Let's talk about regular light that we're talking about. The same frequency, for example. It arrives at the same place but at different times. So it's out of phase. So it'll arrive at the same place, but it'll arrive at a different time. Now, in the case of photography and lenses, when you have a lot of different lenses, it is the nature that the blue end of the spectrum of the light and the red end of the spectrum of the light, they have different capacitances and they actually change. Just like a prism, you've seen a prism, you pass white light through a prism, the red's way the hell over here, the blue's way the hell over there. It's the same issue, and you've got a lot of prisms. They're not prisms, but they're a bunch of lenses in your camera. So in the case of photography, you have different frequencies. You got all the colors of whatever the hell it is you're shooting. Okay, but this time they're arriving at the same time, but in different places. Okay, now this is so important. I need to go over it again. This is one time where I need to repeat myself because you don't understand this and you ain't gonna understand crap. Talk about light phase. I'm gonna talk about, for example, light coming on my ugly face here from the light box. Okay, we got the same frequency of light. Let's say it's just red light pouring from here. Same frequency. It arrives in the same place this time. We're talking about this light, or let's just say I have a blue light being emitted from this flashlight instead of white light. It arrives at the same place, but at different times. So we got boom, 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 boom. So that's the issue there. It's out of phase. We have the same issue with out of phase light in the case of photography, where we have all these elements, 4 elements, 5 elements, 23 elements, whatever the hell the case is with the lens design. But in the case we have here, we have different frequencies. They're arriving at the same time, boom, 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 but they're arriving in different places, boom, boom, boom. And what the nature of lens design is that To correct for this phase disparity, binocular disparity, phase disparity, to correct for this phase disparity, to make, in the case of lenses, the light not only arrive at the same time, but in the same place, because if the light ain't arriving in the same place, then what happens is you've got this. This is in focus, that's out of focus. In focus, out of focus. See, lenses that don't resolve very sharp, i.e. sharpness, that's got an issue, and lens designers generally don't sell mini lenses when they ain't too sharp. So what they do is they stick in ED glass and aspherical elements and doublets, all sorts of glass, and usually it's way too damn much glass. So what they're trying to do is taking the light that it's arriving at the same time, but in different places, but have it arrive at the same time and place, and that would be called in focus. And so that, however, I'll talk about in a second, creates another issue because all lens design is a trade-off. Okay, so that covers luminal depth. And we'll explain it here in a second. I might have to make 2 videos on this, but anyway, spatial depth. Okay, this is where you're actually defining an object. Depth of field, the rendering, the bokeh. I've actually separated this camera. I'm going to illuminate it at f12. If I do that, then okay. I've got all sorts of crap back here I don't want to see. Well, I'm going to render it at f2.8. It's okay, I've separated it out. Now it actually has depth of field rendering. Now, another thing we've got is illumination rendering. Difference between your specular, your diffuse, or your midtone, and your highlight. Your shadow, excuse me. Your specular, your diffuse, your midtone, and your shadow. Sore throat. You have to excuse me on that one. So, this is obviously the same reason why you don't want to stick a flash on top of your camera. Wah! This image, I'm ready to shoot this, and this is my speed light. Boom, boom. It's like, well, great. You know, I got my lens right here, I got my light here. Boom! I've just nuclear blasted this object. I've given it no depth. Well, okay. Let's... Now, I'm like, oh my god. Now I see contouring. I got specular here, I got midtones here, and I've got my shadow over here. So instead of this crap light, I'm telling you, if you ain't watching this, then you're making a mistake, because nobody else talks about this, and I'll be talking about it. If you master this, you'll really be able to see for the first time, if you're not seeing already. Okay, this, boring, dull, flat. See, there's no definition here. There's no contouring. Let me repeat that word, contouring. Okay, no contouring. Contouring, oh my god, I've got depth. Oh, I'm using lighting as a depth control device to give definition. Hopefully it's flattering. You know, you could do someone's face like this, or you could light someone up like this. It's like, well, you've given them depth, but now they look like a ghoul. So obviously it has to be flattering light. So this is render light based upon illumination. Geometric contouring and separation of the subject and how it's illuminated. You know, if anybody wants to do it, I've actually had more than a few people that seem halfway intelligent, but of course they're idiots. They'll say to me, you're not going to get depth in a picture, it's a two-dimensional object. It's like, have you ever seen a hologram, moron? Have you? It's also a two-dimensional object. If you want to deny depth, then walk around all day with one of your eyes duct taped shut. You know? Oh, I'm still seeing the same thing, but, you know, where is it? Is it here? Oh, no, there it is. Okay. Just walk around all day with one of your eyes shut. Okay? Depth. Binocular disparity. Human binocular vision. If you want to experience the suck factor, you'll walk around with one of your eyes shut. Where do you think, you know, where the hell's the depth? You know, one eye sees the same damn thing as two eyes, right? I'm looking at the same thing now as I am now. So what's the difference? Okay, I see the same thing here as I see here, but here I have no depth. Oh, here I do have depth. Oh, lenses kind of work the same way. Where's the depth? One eye sees the same damn thing as two eyes open. So where's the depth at, damn it? Binocular spatial disparity. This gets back to phasing of the light. Oh my god. Instead of having the light arrive not only at the same time, but trying to make it arrive in the same place, we've gone from this to this. You know, Cyclops vision here. Obviously, your camera only has one lens, so it's got one eye. So you take advantage of all the depth possible. Binocular disparity and you know, the disparity both affect the same rendering of the perceived light. You know, your lens is obviously only one eyeball. It needs all the luminal depth and compositional depth you can feed it. So this is how lenses and illumination process these two spatial and luminal depth renderings. We have two different types here: luminal depth, as I said, and spatial depth. The spatial depth covers depth of field rendering and illumination rendering, to give contouring to your object vis-a-vis the illumination, whether that's natural or ambient lighting or it's artificial lighting. And I love artificial lighting because Mother Nature's a bitch and she doesn't like to cooperate all that often. Now, the other thing is too is like I've got some really awesome Zeiss lenses and they're really, really expensive. Excuse me. There are morons out there bitching, that lens wide open, it's got purple and green fringing. All that purple and green fringing is actual depth. Your lens is talking to you. It's saying, listen, bitch, I'm actually rendering this very, very deep, but you can't see it. See, if you actually take a shot at like f1.4 out of my $1,500 Zeiss 35mm f1.4, and you got high contrast on the subject, like a white rose, white something another, against a darker background, you'll see some purple and green fringing. Like, I don't like that. I don't like that purple and green fringing. Well, if you had some purple and green 3D glasses, which these are not, but let's just pretend that they are, and that picture you printed out, you think, well, this lens sucks. It's got purple and green fringing. This is the case. If you put on purple and green glasses and looked at that same picture, you go, oh crap! Look at the depth. Remember the old 3D movies you have to watch? Remember the comic books you used to have when a kid? And you put on the 3D glasses and you go, oh my god, look at the depth. That awesome, expensive lens is actually rendering depth. It's at your ass sees chromatic aberration. And humans don't really like chromatic aberration. But what you're looking at is you're looking at a three-dimensional image. It's just that you're not seeing it with these eyeballs. You have to put on like a pair of these. But instead you go into Photoshop and you go, eliminate chromatic aberration, longitudinal chromatic aberration. So the lens is actually rendering correctly. This is the trade-off I'm talking about lens design. We got 4 attributes of depth. We got 2 different types of depth, ultimately luminal depth, as I said, and spatial depth. So the 4 attributes we have of depth is translational or perceptual depth, which I've covered endlessly now. Micro contrast, higher micro contrast, the better the perception of the detail and depth. Binocular depth from low element count prime lenses with foreground and background disparity that layers and separates out objects. The micro contrast is capturing the intermediate tonal ranges, which contribute to the realism of the shot, especially low contrast compositions, for example, like a pile of wood. This is really, really important in black and white photography. Microcontrast is the lens's ability to differentiate between smaller and smaller and more nearly similar tonal values. So the other aspect of depth is rendered depth. The binocular depth from the low element count prime lenses with foreground and background disparity that layers and separates objects with distance within the composition. This is a phase reduction. Like putting on a starlight projector, you'll split your 2 eyes. It'll split a single image from a lens that's actually sitting out there. Most people probably never worn starlight goggles. It takes a single image like from a lens and it'll split it out, but there's no binocular disparity there. That's when you wear these suckers. They're amazing, but you have no binocular vision. The really, 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 really expensive ones do have 2 lenses, and then you've got depth perception. This is the crap that Navy SEALs and like Delta Force uses, but simple, like Rocky War vet grunts and whatnot, they're wearing a single lens that actually splits the image into 2, but they don't have any depth. But since they're usually looking at stuff way far off, then depth isn't a consideration. You're not dealing with stuff like here and here, so it's not so much of an issue. But this is the same thing as far as the phase reduction. As an analogy, elemental phasing is the error in technical accuracy that makes up the insanity of lens construction. Lenses are designed to wrangle red and blue spectrum light into phase, so it arrives not only at the same place through the lenses, lens air, lens air, lens air, lens air, as the light's passing through. It's made to design and wrangle the red and blue end. Okay, you shoot light through a prism, the red will be over here, the blue will be over here. These lenses, the ED glass elements, the doublets, and the asphericals are designed to wrangle light through the lens, goes through at the same time. The red and the blue, they both arrive through a gateway at a certain time, but they're not in the same place. Red will be over here, blue will be over here. These lenses are designed to wrangle the light so that they come into the same space. But this is unnatural. This is why Important, important. This is why all lens design is a trade-off. This is done to maximize the resolution, which it does, but near-perfect lenses with great depth rendering split the best of both worlds and do have both. Like the Zeiss's, for example, and like the low element count Nikkors, the really, really, really expensive, like 105mm f2 DC Nikkor, 135mm f2 DC Nikkor, these old low element count primes. They have the best of both worlds. They have both chromatic aberration issues, and they are extremely sharp. Now they could be like super sharp, like the Otis, that really, really, really expensive Zeiss lens, that what it's done is sacrifice everything else for sake of sharpness. But that's a problem, because that lens sucks. It's like, no, it's not. It's one of the sharpest lenses in the world. You're damn right, and it sucks. Well, I don't understand, because that's all that's important is how sharp a lens is. No, it isn't. You're a moron. It's like a wino that like, I like this wine, what do you like it? Because the alcohol content is really, really high. That's exactly what people are like when talking about lenses that are really, really sharp. It's like, why do you like it? Because it's really sharp. It's got a high alcohol content. You know, they're not connoisseurs of what really makes up a damn good. Like, I like this lens. Well, what do you like? I don't know. I just like it. It looks good. It's like, I know why that lens is good. Most people don't know what a good lens is because they've only tried out 5 or 6 or 7 or at the most, 9 or 10 lenses, and they have no idea what the hell. It's like someone that goes to, Walgreens and buys a bottle of wine. Like, well, I like this stuff. Well, this is Walgreens, dude. Yeah, this is the best wine that Walgreens has got. Damn, how about you go to a wine store? You pick out some real crap from, like, Italy. Some of these vineyards that have been growing wine since the times of ancient Rome. And then you go, oh, damn, now I know what a real wine tastes like. And people tell me that all the time. They're like, I had no idea what a real lens was till I picked up this lens that you recommend. It's like, yeah, I know. Anyway, merely sharp lenses that are sharp only have poor micro contrast. They have weak color saturation, and they have poor depth rendering. The sharpest lenses that exist must, by default, have poor micro contrast and poor color saturation and rendered depth that is also poor due to phase interference. Phase interference. Science, bitch. Simple optics. Because they have sacrificed everything for the sake of near and far in spectrum phasing, so that the light, as it passes through the elements and the air inside between those elements, glass air. They've sacrificed everything so that the light arrives not only in the same time, which it always does through the lens of different frequencies, red and blue in spectrum, and everything in between, but also in the same place, because when it arrives in the same place, that means you focus the light, and that means high resolution. And people are stupid. That's all they care about. I care if it's sharp. What about everything else? Perfect lenses are a trade-off. Here's the secret. You better listen to me now because it's undeniable, it's irrefutable, and it's 100% the damn fact. The best lenses on Earth have chromatic aberration. Like, no, they don't. Yes, they do. Because they split the difference between one world and the other one. They split the difference. Means you can't have the best of both worlds. You can have ones that are really, really sharp, and good color saturation, good micro contrast, but they split the difference. You can never have all of everything and all of the other. If you split the difference and you make the lens really, really good with high quality, you can basically have like 98% of one and 98%, which is really, really good. But the best lenses still have chromatic aberration. It's like, why is this $1,600 lens that's got chromatic aberration in f1.4? That's because that lens is designed well. No, a really good lens shouldn't have chromatic aberration. No, you're an idiot. You just don't know how the hell lenses are designed. I do. So, phase interference. Compositional depth. Using flash defines a subject with specular, diffuse, and shadow gradation. In other words, contouring. Like instead of going, wah, I'm actually going to give this subject some definition. Oh my God! That is contouring your subject with illumination, be it natural light or artificial light. Bokeh lighting, to give it depth, we know what the hell bokeh is for. Purely optical, using depth of field to render the subject in background isolation and the proper perceived depth using bokeh, your aperture. So you got bokeh depth, which is purely optical, micro contrast depth or perceptual depth, which is electro-optical, rendered depth due to lens construction, which is purely electrical, and you have compositional depth, which is purely optical, purely lighting optical, same thing. So anyway, that's it, and this is the most complete explanation of depth, and you will not hear about this crap anywhere else.
And if you watch this video, you should probably watch it twice because you'll learn something. And if you understand this video, which is 100% accurate, then you will know more than 99.9% of the rest of the photographers in the world.